What's going on, Vapor fans? Today we're going to be talking about the new tank from Uwell. Not gonna lie, this little guy has caused a lot of confusions in the way you're supposed to pronounce these things. I've seen a couple of videos that are currently out at the moment, and it really reminded me of this viral video of a spelling bee from a long time ago.
What's the word again?
Heron.
Hairwink?
Heron.
Hairrow?
Heron.
Hairline?
Heron.
Heroin? Maybe speak the word.
So yeah, over at the screen capture over here, if we pull up Google Translate and see how this thing is supposed to be pronounced and exactly what it means, it is a French word for gust. So let's click on the listen button and see what it's supposed to sound like.
Rafale.
Refill?
Rafale.
Raffle?
Rafale.
Rafale?
Rafale.
Raphael?
Rafale.
Reefer?
Rafale.
Could you please speak the word? Alright, so enough goofing around, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this item. So first impressions of it in its packaging, kick-ass, totally different. Kind of looks like a, reminds me of two tennis ball, like whatever, like a little mini Pringle bottle. But yeah, definitely when you pop it open, shockingly, wow, there is a lot of stuff that comes with this, and let's dive down to take a look at that. So throughout this video, I'm going to leave this little card over here, not just for shameless plug reasons, but also to give me a good feel of where the camera angle is so that I'm always within the camera at all times. So let's begin. The first is the canister that this thing comes in that also doubles as a very, very nice pencil case. Comes with an extra quartz tank, a bag of extra parts and O-rings, one extra pre-made coil, a detailed colorful info manual, a Capture the King literature piece. What this says is that the first 100,000 tanks that go out, 500 of them will be made in a special color. And finally the tank itself, which also comes with a coil pre-installed. Accessories that are sold separately are the pre-built coil heads. They come in nickel 0.1, stainless steel 0.2, and stainless steel 0.5. And they are sold in packs of 4. Each tube also has anti-counterfeit codes that you could check with on the myuwell.com site. An RBA section is also available to build your own coils. Authenticity sticker inside as well. Be sure to stay tuned for the RBA build tutorial portion at the end of this video. Before we move on to the tank, quick overview of the coil. This is the RBA section, and this is the pre-built coil of the Rafale tanks. The Rafale tank now comes with a gold-plated positive pin at the bottom. However, the rebuild portion is only stainless. I want to make a very important mention that the Rafale tank is not the successor to the Crown tank, and therefore the new coils are not backwards compatible with the Crown tank. The diameter of the Rafale tank is much larger than the diameter of the Crown tank. The purpose of the Rafale tank is to focus on vapor production, while the purpose of the Crown was to focus more on flavor. Now let's talk about the tank. The new tank from Uwell comes with a silicone sleeve for the drip tip. This silicone sleeve is also backwards compatible with the old Crown tank. This would suggest that the mouth feel of both drip tips is very similar. However, the inner diameter of both tanks is very, very different. The Rafale tank is using a non-removable drip tip. The non-removable drip tip twists as a function to adjust an internal piston on the inside of the tank. As we turn over counterclockwise, you can see the piston on the inside of the tank begin to lower. The lowered piston allows us to fill juice from the top holes. It is recommended by Uwell to use either a glass dropper or unicorn bottles. We would then twist the drip tip clockwise in order to reseal the piston. What I like most about this piston design is that when resealing the tank, it creates negative vacuum. As opposed to traditional sub-tanks, when we reseal the cap on top, we would actually add positive pressure to the tank. Positive pressure to an already primed coil will sometimes cause flooding within the system. The Rafale tank has a very unique anti-spitback protection system inside. It is very different from the spitback protection in the past that I've worked on. I first met the people at Uwell back in August of 2015 at an ECC event in Pomona. At the time when I explained the spitback protection that I was working on, which is a spitback plate, as you can see over here, which is originally an upgraded attempt at the drip tips that came with the original 454. However, they explained to me that they would be able to do an anti-spitback system without hindering the direct airflow of vapor. I didn't understand this at the time. However, when breaking down the tank and looking at the chimney, it starts to become very clear. Looking down the barrel of this chimney, we see that there is a plate inside. The plate also has a twist to it, and this twist will not hinder the flow of vapor while still offering spitback protection. Although the coils are still installed very much like any other traditional sub-tank, we still want to make full notice that in comparison to the Crown tank, which was the first Uwell product, the Rafale tank is no way a successor to the Crown tank. The difference in the airflow adjustment and the diameter of the coils will result in very, very different vaping experiences. I would still regard the Crown tank for the best balance in airflow and flavor, while I would think that the Rafale tank is Uwell's response to the TFV4, 100% focused on large vapor production, without being as much of a juice guzzler as the TFV4. So let's begin to fill this tank and see its performance. We first turn the drip tip in a counterclockwise direction to dial down the piston. Let's get our glass dropper. I've noticed that while using a glass dropper, what you want to do is press the tip very firmly against the hole first before you go ahead and press and fill. So do take your time on this, or things could get very messy. So now that I have the tank filled to pretty much a third full, we could go ahead and have a vape. Alright guys, so here we are back at the top cam, and today I'm going to be rocking this on the SDNA 200. There will be a review on this bad boy very, very soon. So first and foremost, because I just primed this thing, we just started to do this, so I'm going to vape it at 35 watts just to get it started. As promised, huge vapor production. However, I should close off the airflow just a little bit. Airflow control on this thing is about 3 clicks before it's totally off. So closing it off at 2 clicks, it's still a lung hitter. Here we are at 95 watts. Now granted, I'm only doing this at 95 watts. I could totally see this thing being vaped at 100, 120 watts. It really is for that huge cloud, huge lung hit enthusiast. Hence the whole silicone drip tip to keep everything nice and cool. Dragons of clouds. I'm personally not going to crank it up past 95 because I'm not that kind of a vapor, but it's really doing its thing, and I'm not having any issues with the leaking or anything like that. So let me speak a little bit on my final thoughts of this, okay? Because I'm saving the rebuild tutorial portion for the end of this, I'm going to talk about what I think about the rebuild portion right now, because I've already done it a few times. First and foremost, I want to say for the rebuild portion of this, which is very which for me and a lot of people is going to be a huge, buy or don't buy because of the rebuild, okay? When we look back to the Crown tank, I felt as if the RBA portion of the Crown tank, literally a joke, mainly because the Crown tank was designed to be a vertical coil, yet the RBA portion was meant natively for horizontal coils. Now, of course, at any time, being an experienced builder, we could go ahead and force coils to be in other directions as well. We could force build a vertical coil inside. However, you're not going to be able to build enough height on that thing to build something decent. So, with that said, for the new RBA section, if you are able to build it, the performance on that thing, I would say, gives me about 85% close to these pre-built vertical coils, which says a lot. Huge performance, still being able to crank it up to 100 watts, a little bit over, and huge clouds. So what that means is that when you own the Crown tank, the RBA section is almost kind of sort of pointless to me, because building a native vertical I mean, building a native horizontal coil on that thing, normally I couldn't crank it up anywhere past like 40 watts. The airflow restriction was a lot more hindered on it because, you know, it's being blocked off by itself. I have to keep buying coils. I have to keep finding a way to acquire more crown coils so that the crown vapes like the way it's supposed to be. However, using the Rafale tank with this RBA section, I could go ahead and continuously rebuild on that RBA, and it will vape the way it's supposed to vape. You see what I'm saying? It vapes the way it was designed for, and that's a very, very big selling point for me. As far as the replacement coils itself, for me, I would probably just buy a single pack of it so that like I have it on the side in case of emergencies, in case of like, let's say I'm going on vacation, I'm going on trips, I'm going on cruises, something like that where I can't be bothered doing a rebuild. I'm gonna have just the single pack of coils on the side, and that's it. But definitely, I'll get the RBA section. But I do want to mention that the RBA section is not for everyone because it is a little bit more of a difficult build. 3-prong atomizer RDAs and stuff, this thing I would say is a little more difficult than that. So stay tuned for the RBA rebuild tutorial in order to decide for yourself. Overall, for this Rafale tank, what do I think of it? Granted that you can't remove the drip tip, and that's kind of a bummer for some people, right? However, I see it more like this. It's a tank, and why did I buy a tank? I bought the tank because I need something to hold a certain amount of juice and to go out and about with it. Having the non-removable drip tip is just one less thing for me to worry about. So although it's a con for some folks not using their own drip tips and sticking with the proprietary one, it's also kind of a pro as well because, you know, this thing is you never have to worry about losing this thing for any reason. Speaking to Uwell, they will be making more sleeves. If you lose the sleeves, then no big deal. I personally think using the sleeves is very comfortable, very nice. It absolutely does reduce the heat. If you were to have like a juice line and you need like some testers in front of you, whether it's the crown or the Rafale, because they are backwards compatible of the sleeve size, you could just have a bunch of these tanks and then get a whole bunch of sleeves as opposed to using a bunch of disposable plastic drip tips and then use the sleeves as your disposables. So looking around the internet and speaking with Uwell, the MSRP retail price of this thing is $45 a tank. The initial release of the crown tank was only $39.99, so this thing being $5 more, yeah, very, very good deal. I don't see why people shouldn't own this one. Definitely one thing about Uwell that you could definitely count on: clean, 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 ready to vape out of the tube. 2016, everything should be ready to vape out of the packaging. Don't you agree? So that's my review for the Rafale tank. I hope you guys found it informative as well as thorough. Continue to stay tuned for the RBA tutorial section right now. Alright children, you ready? So here we are again over at the dive cam looking at the Rafale RBA section. So as we pop this thing open, there's a lot of fun little things that comes with it on the bottom. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Now I've opened this up already and played with a lot of things. This is the extra tools and stuff that you get. Also has an extra pre-built coil. The Rafale coil, initially this thing is pre-built for you. I already gutted it and taken it apart, okay? But I still do have the original coil right here, and I will explain a lot. And this is something that I built previously to that worked very well, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But first and foremost, let's talk about the instruction manual that comes with this thing, okay? I opened this up, take a look around inside of it, and I didn't like what I was seeing, okay? I followed this instruction first, and then I failed. So, what am I saying? I'm saying don't follow this, follow my tutorial. It's going to be a lot easier this way. I had a couple of friends who also attempted this and didn't turn out as well. But after we did a little tutorial over Skype, then they were able to pull it off. So, here we go. First thing I want to talk about, right, is this little guy, the special tool over here. I speculate that this thing is about like a 6 millimeter diameter, okay? Because in comparison to a 3.0 on the Kuro coiler, wow, this thing is much, much thicker. So let's leave my little coiler aside and talk about this. Now, this is not a plunger tool, okay? You do not build coils on this thing, wrap the cotton around, and then plunge this thing in, and then magically, voila, everything is done. Far, far, far from it. It is not like that whatsoever. The first thing that you want to do is gut out the little tiara that's on the inside. So, I have my little hex key over here, so I'm just going to go like this, and then this washer, okay, is to help press the top of the wire against the body, and when the wire is pressed against the body, this is the negative, and then down here this is the positive. And what we do is that once this wire catches the inside, you see that hole right there, okay, then there is a screw that we screw down over here, and then that traps the lead, and then this makes the positive connection, okay? So what I first want to do, just to prove a point real quick, okay, is to show you a couple of things. See where the bend is? This is for the top and this is for the bottom, okay? So this is down here, all right, this is the positive and this is the negative, okay? Keep that in mind, negative top, positive bottom. So you see how this one, like, it comes out a little bit before it curves back up? Right, you need that, all right? You don't want this thing to curve up like where it's still coiling. You want it to bend your wire or your canthal or your stainless after it comes out a little bit, okay? And the reason for that is that when this thing is installed, right, this thing will hug against the edge of the wall a lot more, allowing this ring to be a little more easily installed, right? Okay, so first thing that I'm going to do is take this little guy over here, and then this is what was pre-built by Uwell. And what I want to show you is that if I took this thing over here, right, and tried to sit it down into the hole, I can't do it. I can't do it. You see that? You see how it's like being tugged to the side? This proves, right, that the original coils was not built on this tool. Well, if this thing that you guys made so perfectly for this, that works on this, it was not built on this tool, then why are you giving me this tool? Okay, it would have been better if they just supplied a 6 millimeter rod and then be done, right? So this is something that I had to build myself, so it's not pretty, okay? Definitely not as nice as this thing, but we're going to attempt to do so. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pull out a 22 gauge canthal. Why am I using 22 gauge canthal? Because that's what most of us have lying around. Very, very accessible wire, all right? So I'm just going to go ahead and do the tutorial on this thing first. If you guys have comparable gauges of, stainless steel and you want to use that, by all means do so, but I'm just using this because this is what most of us have lying around. So what are we going to do? We're going to go ahead and unravel this little guy, and then I would say go ahead and use a generous portion of this, okay? Better to go ahead and use a generous portion of something and get that build done right the first time and feel good about it, as opposed to be stingy about it and then fail and get angry and throw your atomizer across the room. So there's my nice hot portion of 22 gauge canthal over here. Okay, and let me make sure that I have the screw inside this. Yes, I do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to release the little grub screw that's on the inside of this thing. Okay, because what we're going to do is that we're going to put it on the tool. See, there's a little hole over here, so I'm going to tighten the grub screw here, not all the way, just a little bit. Now, first thing to do, okay, pick a side, any side. I personally recommend your smoother side rather than your kinked side, okay? And what we're going to do is push this down over here, okay, and give it a little slack, okay? A little more slack, it's going to be easier to work with later. So give it a little slack over here. And on top here, we're going to tighten this down. Not a lot, just a little bit, okay? And I'll tell you why in a second. Because what we have to do now is turn this thing, bend it like that. Okay, you want to try and get it as flush as possible to the bottom over here, even though that's pretty much not going to happen because of malleability reasons, right? So, but do your best to do that. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this thing as much as I can, right, 90 degrees, right, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna release this thing a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna release the screw a little bit so that this thing could sit in even more as flush as it can be, right? And then I'm going to tighten it again. See that? Okay, so tighten a little bit, let it, you know, bend, and then unlock, and then let it sit in. And now we attempt this. So before we do, go ahead and get yourself a plier over here so that you could like grab the side and start turning. Now, depending on what you're using, okay, but depending on if you're using 22 gauge nichrome, if you're using on something else, you may or may not want to anneal the sucker first. Okay, so if you're looking to do that, then it's not like I don't have a torch, so I have a torch over here. This is maybe, like you don't have to do it. Okay, you can do it, you don't have to do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just torch this thing real quick. Okay. Okay. So let me feel the wire a little bit. Okay. Yeah, the heat is dissipated. Now I'm gonna go ahead and clip over here, right, and then start to do my first wrap. Okay. Now what I want you to do is that, like, after you do the first wrap, okay, make sure by eye, right, every single wrap after that is either evenly spaced or totally flush. Okay, you want to try your best to wrap things as even as possible. Okay, because it's starting from here that, like, you know, you do your best, and then what it's going to look like afterwards, yeah, you're pretty much stuck with that. Okay, so just do your best over here. It doesn't have to be, you know, Picasso artwork, whatever, just like how like Uwell did it, because I'm pretty sure they have an actual coiler on top to help you twist this thing, right, while we're doing it by hand and with the tool. So, you know, it's not going to be great, it's not going to be pretty, okay, but we'll do what we can here. Okay, now I recommend 9 wraps, anywhere between like 8 to 10, okay, but I recommend 9 wraps. So let me see what I got going on over here. Okay, there we go. All right, so I got 9 wraps going on over here. Okay, so a couple of nice tugs. Definitely with your plier, give it a couple of nice tugs. Do your best to try to get like the coils as even as possible. Okay, doing what I can here. All right, now without taking it out of the tool, right, you want to go off like what we said earlier by just like a millimeter, and then use your plier tool over here, right, and then kink it, give it that 90-degree kink. See what I'm saying? See that? I'm a little bit out, and then I have that kink, because later on when it's in the barrel, it will, you know what I mean? It'll flush against the wall. Okay? So this is my coil. This is what I got, and here we go. Gonna release the screw here to release the coil. Okay. All right. And then from this point, what you could do is torch this. Why am I torching the coil? This was the old school way of making microcoils back then. You know, before we put it on the atomizer, we would torch it here, and then and then pitch it with our tweezers. Yeah. So bam. So what do you guys think now? It was a hot mess before, but the coils are much more even now. The rest of this is going to be okay because this is what sits on the inside. Okay, so don't worry too much about that. It's going to be all right. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this on the side to cool, right? And show you guys the next step from here. So what I forgot to mention that you're going to need the most for this tutorial, okay, is this little guy over here, okay? You're going to need a flat tweezer, right? Do not go ahead and use the ceramic tweezers, although I love using ceramic tweezers, but ceramic tweezers are way too fat, way too heavy, and they just simply won't work for this job. We need something very flat. Why? Because later on, when we're installing stuff, we install with the tweezers. Okay, we don't install with the tool. We need the tool at the end to help us for a little bit of adjustment, but the tool is not an installation, is not an applicator or anything like that. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and shove your tweezer in, and then by eye, pretty much look at where the ring, where the edge is, like that. Okay, and then you want to take out your tweezer from here, right? And this is pretty much the width of your cotton strip. All right. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to whip out my cotton strip over here, right? And then measure this pretty much by eye. Okay. And that's what I'm going to cut. So it's going to be different for everybody because of the height of your coil, right? But what I want you to do is that this thing has to be precise, has to be really, really, really super precise. So I'm gonna get my scissors over here, and it can't be off. It can't be like you know, this side is fatter, this side is it's not a forgiving thing. Okay, so go ahead and cut this, right? And it's very, very important that you get this right. It cannot be too thick. It cannot be too thin. And the reason for that is if it's too thin, now you don't have enough wick. If it's too thick, now it's going to create a lot of obstruction. All right. So when we wrap this thing, here's what I want to show you. All right. With my tool over here, this is very important. Let's just say right here is where we begin, right? Exactly where the kink of this thing is. So when we go around, that'll be the first wrap. On your second wrap over here, you don't want to go all the way back to where you began. You want to stop like a millimeter before it, because that way, if you cut it here and then it's done wrapping, then it's considered as even all around. If you go all the way to exactly where you began, then you'll have a spine over here that's going to be a little fatter than anywhere else. Okay, so I'm going to start doing this right now. Now, if I happen to make this look easy, keep in mind that I am Asian and therefore I am gifted in origami. So that doesn't mean that, you know, it's for everyone. So just kidding. Remember, your strip over here, do not let it fan out. It will attempt to fan out kind of like, you know, a very overstacked sandwich. So be very, very careful with that, and let's begin with the wrapping. Okay, so that's one wrap, right? And I'm back to the beginning again. And now I want to keep a lot of pressure on this thing as I go along. Okay, maintain a lot of pressure, right, until I get somewhere around here. Now, before I continue, I want to make sure that the bottom is also a lot of airflow, nice and neat. Top, a lot of airflow. See that? I can see through. There's not a lot of obstruction over here. Okay, and then what I want to do is I want to pinch this with my tweezer. Okay, I want to pinch this as much as I can with my tweezer. All right, and then with the excess over here, right, I am clipping this with my scissor like that. Okay, now again, the longer section of this was my my down, right, and then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to joust it through that little hole right there. Okay, so boom, got that, right, and then try your best to make a little room for itself, and then this thing should snugly fit in. See that? Okay, now hold your lead over here and then pull your tweezer out. See that? Now, boom, installed. See that? Okay, you might need a couple more tries. Do not get discouraged. Again, I am an origami master, so kidding. Again, I'm going to go ahead and look for the grub screw now and put it back on this thing. So my grub screw was originally on my tool, right? And get this tiny little Allen key. And then put this here like so. Okay. Okay. So this is sitting down nice and snug, and then I'm going to lock this into position. Okay. After this is locked, take your flush cutter or your I don't know, nail clipper if you're old school, right? And cut this as flush as you can. Okay? Nice and clean. Bottom is done. Now, on the top part over here, right? This is where the tiara comes back into play. So find your little tiara washer. Here we go. Okay, and then you see how my coil is hugging against the wall over here because of you know, giving it a little bit extra. So you should have no problems installing it by hand. Okay, if you have a problem installing it by hand, then that means, you know, something's wrong with the angle, like something's off. You should be able to install it by hand, and then using a flat screwdriver to bring it down a little bit, you know, just to help you out. There you go. Boom. See that? That is installed RBA. Okay. Now, looks a little bit janky, looks a little bit off to the side or whatever, right? So what we do here is that we go ahead and we clip the extra lead. Okay. This is done. See, PVA cutters, they cut without stuff flying everywhere. Now what we do is that we take the original tool that was here, right? Again, this thing was never meant to be a plunger, but we put it here and then we wiggle it around a little bit, right, to where we need it to be, and then voila, take a look again. Take a look at that. Is that factory? No, not really. Like, but it's close. It's close. I think it's pretty close. I thought it did a pretty good job on this one, right? Okay. So, what do we do now? We prime the coil. So, let's get our juice again. The juice I'm using is I don't care. I hate this juice. Who cares? It's juice. So, go ahead and prime this thing around, right? Give it a little bit in the middle, and then don't forget your channels, okay? Because prepping your juice channels over here really helps to get it going. Well, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We are vapors, so we have no patience whatsoever, right? So everything is nice and primed and going over here, right? And let's put this back in the tank. So done. All right, so you don't need to see me fill this up again. I'm going to fill her up, and then we're going to take it back up to the top cam. Okay, so here we are again at the top cam. I have the rebuildable portion inside of the Rafale, and as always, I begin at 35 watts on my journey. That's pretty good. All right, let's bring up the wattage. One more time on the SDNA 200, 60 watts. Not bad. Wicking is keeping up very strong. That means it's time to go up to 95 watts. Here we are, 95 watts. So, as you can see, again, chucking huge. I highly recommend this tank if you're looking for something of the same performance value as the TFV4, but not as much of a juice guzzler. This thing, very efficient, very, very big clouds. Good luck with your rebuilds on this. So, as always, on PVA, always remember, do your homework and vape clever. Take care, my friends.